AI has the potential to bring great benefits to society, but the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights recently called for a moratorium of AI systems that threaten human rights. It seems to be that one of the biggest risks is the affront to human dignity if machines are given life and death decisions, for example, as with autonomy in weapons. What are your views on delegating life-death decisions to machines, and what can be done to address the development of lethal autonomous weapons?
And indeed, we've already seen this, haven't we? We've seen increasing use of drones in warfare, and we talk now about the emergence of the robot army that's going to change the very nature of warfare.
We do, and it's a concern that I have. It's a concern that thousands of my colleagues, the majority of the people that I work with, share, that we're entering a new revolution in warfare. I mean, the first revolution in warfare was the invention of gunpowder. The second revolution was the invention of nuclear weapons. This is the third revolution that will allow us to scale warfare, do terrible, inhumane things.
And so what you're talking about as well is that if we're talking about robot soldiers, these are indefatigable. They're not going to be fed. They can fight 24/7, and they're not going to make, if they're not programmed this way, not going to make human decisions.
They're not
ethical or compassionate decisions.
They don't have our humanity. They don't have our conscience. They can't be punished. They can't be held accountable. And it's not Terminator. It's not some intelligent humanoid robot with a red glint in its eye that Hollywood would have you believe. It's much simpler technologies. It's things like, as you say, drones that are already being used in attack in Libya.
And it's actually called, they use this phrase, don't they, a more humane warfare.
They do, and it's not clear to me that it will be more humane. It will be perhaps a faster way to kill people. And they will do whatever you program them to do. And previously, if you wanted to do harm, you had to persuade an army of people to do that. But now you would just need one programmer.
How do you feel, Michael, about the ethical decisions that we make? And it's not just, we're talking about warfare here, but there are a whole lot of ethical questions around robots and whether robots do harm to human beings. Isn't it the first law? That's right, must not do harm. But in fact, we can't guarantee that.
No, we can't guarantee that any technology that we build won't be used against us by artificial intelligence or by our adversaries in another country or our neighbors down the street. It is a very challenging issue, and I think it will remain the subject of debate in perpetuity, right? Not only how do we empower robots to make life and death decisions, whether it's an autonomous drone that's going to have a strike on some target, or it's the Tesla on autopilot that decides if it's going to kill you or it's going to kill the group of bystanders on the street. These issues are going to be persistent, but then it's going to be the question of how do we treat robots? That's another ethical question. And the point that I want to make is that this is not, in my view, unique. I think it is endemic to any advance in technology. We always have to ask ethical questions, and we should always be asking questions and not looking at this as the one thing that breaks civilization.
But we come back to the China question, because China has made it very clear that they're seeking economic and military dominance by becoming a leader in AI. They're not announcing that they're going to build nuclear attack submarines. They're announcing that they're building underwater autonomous submarines.
And away from warfare, you've said by 2050, if we're looking at a robot world, that you'll have a robot football team that will win the World Cup. I mean, it's not just warfare, but the way this changes everything in our lives. Yeah,
it's hard to think of a part of our life that won't be touched by technology that can do smart things like this.
Kirsten, just before we move on to our next question, this question of ethics and robots, we're talking about warfare, we're talking about the more extreme, dramatic examples of that. But there are simpler things. I remember one person once saying, why were all robots white? Why does Siri have a female voice? What values are we building into artificial intelligence? Do you think much about that, or does that concern you?
Well, when it comes to technology, I'm either really excited about it or really scared by it. The conversation that you were having before about having robots being able to fight 24/7, that is extremely concerning to me. But on the other hand, having a smartwatch on my hand here, being able to track my health data, that is really fascinating to me. And so I think there are some really innovative ways that we can use AI for good in ways that are fun as well and engaging with not just scientists but also the general public.
I'm told by 2050 as well that robots will read the news, but it's already happening.
San, I should just add to that as well. Another really good example that we're doing here in Australia is we're teaching computers to look for animals in animal trafficking. Unfortunately, wildlife trafficking is a global problem, and that's some of the work I'm currently working on. Using innovative technologies to teach computers that that's an animal, that's a lizard. We need to work complementary with people. There's the Border Force as well as sniffer dogs, that this is something we need to do to protect our natural biodiversity, and that's a great example.